Hi friends, Grace here. Welcome to this presentation where we are going to be discussing the Exodus from Egypt and looking at how it applies to us today. Now, the reason why the Lord delivered ancient Israel out of Egypt was simply so they can worship him, so they can keep his Sabbaths. Because if you remember, I believe it was in Exodus chapter 5, Pharaoh doubled their labors. He would not let them rest. And because of that, the Lord began to send the plagues. I'm sure we all know the story. The Lord was sending the plagues and Pharaoh would say he would let them go, but then he would change his mind and so on and so on. It was only on the 10th plague Pharaoh, finally let them go. But what I found very interesting is that just before the 10th plague, just before the Lord was about to deliver Israel finally out of the Pharaoh, he starts to prepare them and give them specific instructions in terms of how they should worship him. And we're going to just discuss these list of instructions and the sequence of events that took place because it's pretty important. Now, if we turn to Exodus chapter 12, Exodus chapter 12 verse 1, we are told, "And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month," remember, month means moon, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." So the first thing the Lord does with ancient Israel is that he gives them a new calendar. He's separating them from the Egyptians, from the pagans, from the world. And he's telling them, this month shall be the first month unto you. This is the beginning. It's a clean slate. He's given them a new calendar. And within this calendar, he's given them a sequence of events in terms of how they are to worship him. And I'm just going to summarize this quickly because you can read the whole story in Exodus 12. But just a few of the points the Lord was telling them. He said that on the 10th day, this is the 10th day of the first month, of the beginning of that month, they were to get a lamb without blemish. And then on the 14th day, they were to kill it and eat it in the evening. And they were also to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. And he tells them, very importantly, that the first day of unleavened bread is going to be a holy convocation unto them. The holy convocation is the Sabbath. I've discussed this in previous presentations. If you go to Leviticus chapter 23 verse 3, it tells you the holy convocation is the Sabbath, and he tells them they are to do no work there. And you'll find this in Exodus chapter 12 verse 16. So it's just telling them, what they were supposed to do. This was the beginning. This was the start. This was how God wanted them to worship him. It continues in Exodus chapter 12, verse 21 to 22, we are told, "Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood, that is, in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning." That's very important. The Lord was telling them that none of them were to leave that house till the morning. Now, if you continue reading the story, Pharaoh does call him at night, but I don't believe Moses answered that call because the Lord specifically told them they were not to leave the house at night. And if you continue reading the story, you'll find that the Egyptians, they were urging the Israelites saying, leave. However, Israel delayed. Why? Well, if people remember, we read that the day after the Passover is always a holy convocation, a high Sabbath, a day where they are to do no work, they are to rest. So Israel, according to the commandment of the Lord, they rested that day despite the fact that the Israelites were urging them, and they left after the Sabbath hours at night. And the reason why we know that is because the Bible clearly tells us this. In Numbers chapter 33 verse 3 we are told, "And they departed from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with an high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. So the Bible clearly tells us that they departed on the 15th, the day after the Passover. But more specifically, the Bible tells us that it was at night the Lord delivered them. If we turn to Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1, we are told, "Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night." Keyword is by night. So note the sequence of events. They have the Passover. The Lord tells them they're not to leave the house till the morning. That day, the Egyptians are urging them to leave, but the Israelites delayed. Why? Because the day after the Passover is a holy convocation. Sabbath is a day, so they keep in that day holy. And then after that day, the night, the Lord now delivers ancient Israel out of Egypt. And the Sabbath commandment is always commemorated with their deliverance from Egypt. So when Moses recaps the 10 commandments in Deuteronomy chapter 5, he includes this when he tells them of the Sabbath commandment. It's very interesting. He tells them in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12, "Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates, that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. And remember the Sabbath day, and remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched hand. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day." So the Sabbath day was always commemorated with their deliverance from Egypt, because that's when they truly obtained that rest from their labors. They were free from Pharaoh, and now they could worship God according to the dictates of their conscience. God was to teach them how he was to be worshipped. He was giving them the feasts, the Sabbaths, and Israel, God was leading them into a land where they could freely worship him. Now, why am I doing this presentation? What's the significance for it for us today? Now, as you well know, I've been doing a number of presentations on the lunar Sabbath. Been very controversial, a lot more controversial than I thought, a lot of anger and hate against it. But in the midst of that, there's also quite a lot of people who are now reaching out to me, and they are seeing the beauty of the message. They are understanding the truth about the Sabbath and how it's supposed to be kept. And they're also realizing that it's not going to be easy. You know, if you want to keep the Sabbath based upon the signs in heavens, because of how it works, God's calendar is different from the Gregorian calendar. They're like, how is this going to work? The Sabbath can also fall on the weekday. This is not possible for me. I need to work, you know. I have kids in schools, you know. I mean, they can't just be missing days. Like, this is impossible. This is just not real. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that we are still slaves in Egypt in the spiritual sense. We are still slaves to the system that they have set up. Many of us have been born into the system, and we don't know that we are slaves. You know, there's a statement where they say the best kind of slaves are those who don't know that they are slaves. You get what I mean? So now that this has come to light, and many of you now want to worship God based upon his lunar calendar, the only calendar that he gave us, and keep his Sabbaths based on that calendar, you're finding it very challenging and you are very worried about it. But I'm here to tell you, friends, don't worry, don't fear. Just as God delivered ancient Israel with a mighty hand out of Egypt, out of the world, he's going to do the same thing for us. He wants to do that for us, but we've got to be patient and we've got to have faith. Now, none of you need to make any drastic decisions at the moment. You have to settle into this truth and you really have to understand it and be spiritually settled. As I mentioned, it took me 5 months before I settled into this. It was tough. A lot of the questions that you were having, I was like, no, it can't be. This is just too strange. This is too weird. How can I keep the Sabbath on like a weekday? How does that work? You know, God's calendar is just like, I don't understand the moon. How it was just completely confusing. But during those few months, no, I actually rejected it. I thought, no, this just doesn't make any sense. But there was just a lot of things that were brought to me that was bothering me that I just couldn't answer. In particular, that Samoa issue, to me that was just confusion. And I learned about the Gregorian calendar, how it was a calendar that was initially and actually designed to dictate our worship times. You know, they give us Saturday, Sunday off, that's our rest. And how it gives us the work days, Monday to Friday. And it gives us the Catholic feast days, which, you know, you can take off. You have the odd day off here and there in the year. I realized that this calendar is modeled after the Catholic Roman Jesuit system, and we've been under this all our lives. We've been slaves to this, and many of us didn't realize this. It's only now, as the light of the third angel's message is shining pertaining to God's true Sabbath, many of us are realizing that we are still in Babylon. We are in Egypt, we are in the world, because we want to now worship God based in the signs of the skies, just as he dictated ancient Israel, how they were to keep their Sabbaths based on the signs of the sky, the lunar Sabbath. Historical documents clearly confirm this. And now we want to do this. We are finding it hard. We are finding it difficult. And friends, in this message, I just want to tell you not to despair. Don't make any hasty decisions. Just be honest with God. Tell him your situation. Tell him your work. Tell him you want to serve him. You want to come out of Babylon and keep the clock cycle he gave us in the beginning. You know? So just be honest. The worst thing you can do is just shut this message down. Shut the sweet calling of the Holy Spirit because it's not fitting your current lifestyle. I don't think God will be happy with that. I had to do it as well. It was hard for me as well. I didn't want this to happen as well, you know, but I had to face reality of it. And the issue in Samoa is what really woke me up. It showed to me that Rome controls the calendar, it's controlling our worship, you know, and they can move the days around, and they do this often because, as I've mentioned before, Saturday was originally the first day of the week, and they've moved it around and they made Sunday the first of the week. They've done it with Samoa and all of that kind of stuff. So you're basically dancing to the tune of Rome, modern Pharaoh. So whatever they call Saturday, you think that's God's day when that's not it. That's Saturn's day. You are dancing to the tune of Rome. You are still under Babylon, and God brought the light of the Samoan issue to highlight that fact. Now, I was listening to Dr. O's presentation video. I think he spoke about the Samoa issue. I actually did a rebuttal, a video on it, but I'm not going to upload it, because if I upload it, people will be like, oh, you're causing drama and blah, blah, blah. But I'll just speak about it briefly here. Now, what he was saying, the Sunday law preacher guy who did the message attacking me, basically, he was saying that what he would do is that if he was in Samoa, he would keep Saturday. He would just change, like he would just move back to Saturday. But then, isn't that breaking this continuous weekly cycle that Adventists like to bang on, that's uninterrupted and you can't switch? You know, so it's basically you're still dancing to the tune of Rome. So it's basically whatever Rome calls Saturday, whatever day they switch, you will just switch with them. That makes no sense. The reason why the Lord calls the Sabbaths the time appointed is because it's an appointed time that he appoints. It's not for Rome or you to decide when it is. It's God that designs it, and he's given us specific instructions how we are to do it. You know, so you're not really keeping the Sabbath based on what God designed. You are still following Rome's system, Rome's calendar. And the call for this time is come out of Babylon, because that system is going to be destroyed. The issue is worship. The issue is the Sabbath test, but it's the true Sabbath. You know, God's Sabbath, and it's in the Bible. Read the Bible. Don't take my words for it. Before Pope Gregory's calendar existed, they had the Bible. And if you remember, in the beginning of the story, the first thing God did with ancient Israel was give them a new calendar based on the moon, which dictated their worship system. And Leviticus 23 beautifully summarizes not only the feast, but the Sabbath day. Everyone knows that. Some Adventists are trying to deny it, but anyone who is sincere knows Leviticus 23 is not just talking about the yearly feasts, it also includes the seventh day Sabbath, which all hangs on God's moedims, which all hang on the moon, which God designed to be our appointed signs for worship. You know, so this is serious. This is like so serious, and the hate against this message is unbelievable. Right now, I think I'm the most hated person in Adventism. People saying, stay away from Grace, she's going to brainwash you with her doctrine, she's evil, she's from the devil, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what am I doing? All I'm doing basically is saying, come out of Babylon. Don't follow Pope Gregory's calendar. Adventists were raised to protest Rome. How can you protest Rome if you're still under Rome? And many of these ministers, they still have the Jesuit globe hanging up in their churches. You know, and they think they can give the loud cry message if you're holding on to anything that Rome has produced, which wars against the word of God. You know, you're no matter how much you preach Sunday law, no matter how much there's in the pulpits, you know, saying Rome, 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 your message has no power. There's no power in it. There may be a few people here and there, a few of the old women who just come to your sermons and, you know, think they're just getting something out of it. But it's not life-changing, you know. They're still in Babylon, you know. So God, I believe this message is going to grow. I think it's so powerful. I'm looking at the rebuttals. They're nothing, you know. This message is gonna go with power. And many Adventists, they're coming into this, they're understanding it, and they are feeling the blessing. And despite all the hate, you know, which has been tough sometimes, mainly from people that I know, that's what hurts the most, is when you know people and they know you and they just turn on you for no reason because you embraced a new, like, a faith, if you like. But you're still the same person, but you've just embraced a new faith, but they hate you and they see you as the enemy. And it's like, wow, like what's going on? And I think this is the separation God is talking about, brother against brother, sister against sister, and so on and so on. Because why would you be so angry and hate someone simply because they want to keep the Sabbath not based on Rome's calendar, God's arch enemy, but they want to keep it based on God's calendar? Why are you so angry? Why are you so frustrated? Why does that make someone a devil and make them so evil? You know, so the people that are doing that or thinking that, I'm really praying for you to wake up, because you're not doing the work of God. You're doing the work of the devil. And the reason why I know it's the work of the devil, because you're spreading lies. You're spreading lies about my character, because it's not true. You're spreading lies. Oh, Grace was never sincere. As if I've been planning this for 15 years to take Adventists out. No way. My journey in Adventism has always been sincere. I came into the faith when I was very young. I was searching for God. I learned about the Sabbath, you know, and I thought Saturday was the Sabbath, so I joined the church. People grow, people change, you know. God reveals things to people. And as God revealed this truth to me, I cannot keep a pagan Saturn day and call that the Sabbath. After I learned this message, I couldn't keep Saturday holy anymore. I was losing the Sabbath. It was troubling me so much, I couldn't do it anymore. But now, as I've made the change, it's only been recently, like this is my second Sabbath, I'm doing this now. And now I'm like settling in. And God is so gracious because it falls on the Sunday for February. But next month it falls on March, on Tuesday, I believe, on the Gregorian Tuesday. But nevertheless, like as I've started to do this, I'm now entering again into the Sabbath rest. And a lot of things I've learned as well. The whole timing of the Sabbath we've got wrong. I know the typical doctrine is sunset to sunset based on the Jews, and also a verse on Leviticus 23, but you'll find that's actually taken out of context. If you look at Leviticus 23, that was specifically for the Day of Atonement, which was which began on the 9th on the even, which ended on the 10th on the even. The Lord is pretty specific about that. But if you study how the ancient Israelites kept the Sabbath, you would find it was just within the sunlight day. It wasn't sunset to sunset. It was daylight hours. And the crucifixion clearly shows this as well, because when they buried Christ, it was at night. The Bible calls it the preparation day. When Mary went to the tomb, it describes that the beginning of the week, the dawning of the day. I did a video on that. Recently uploaded it. You can check it out. I know it's going to be very controversial. Adventists will be like, Ellen White, the foundations. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. But this is how I'm doing it based on my studies, which make more sense to me. And the Sabbath is a lot more joyful and it makes more sense. To me, it always was counterintuitive that one would start the day at night. God is light. When he created the earth, the first thing he said was, let there be light. His presence is light. It's just so fulfilling to wake up in the morning, a new day, as the Sabbath day, rather than doing it in the evening when you're tired. We've all been there where we're rushing to keep the hours of the even, and it becomes stressful. It's not joyful. But doing it this way, like in the daylight hours in the morning, waking up at the dawn of the day in the sun and worshipping God, it's just so much more beautiful and so much more fulfilling. And it really is a holy convocation with the Lord, So despite the hate and the anger, it's been such a blessing for me. And in regards to how it works for me, because someone asked me, is that for me it's a bit easier because I work 80%. I only work 4 days a week, and initially I would always have Friday off. But how I've modeled it for the rest of the year, because I have the calendar of when the Sabbath falls. What I do is that when it falls on the weekday, I've just moved my days from Friday to that Sabbath day, so that I don't break the commandment. And if it's a new moon day and then the Sabbath and it's on the same week, I'll just take the day off. That's what I'm going to do. It still might be tough for me because there might be important meetings and stuff like that. But I just have to pray that I stay strong and don't do it, or like compromise, if you get what I mean. So that's how I'm going to do it, and I think I can make it work for myself. But for you, if this truth was brought to me, let's say 8 years ago, it would have been so hard for me, because back then I was in full-time employment, I was doing contracting, I was traveling like during the week. It would have been like I wouldn't have been able to keep my job, basically. So I know a lot of you are in that position, and just trust God. Just remember that what God did with ancient Israel, delivering them with the plagues, the miracles, he can do that with us. He can bring miracles into our lives. Even me being here now, it's a miracle. It's a blessing that God has done for me, and me being able to keep God's law, based on his lunar calendar, doing it here. It's just been such a blessing and so fulfilling. So if those of you who are out there who are struggling, who are confused, don't give up, don't stress. Remember, we serve a loving God. It's not his will that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. He loves you. He wants to save us. Just trust him. Don't stress yourself out. Just study, settle yourselves into the truth. Remember, it took me 5 months. Some of you have got it quite quick. A lady I was speaking to, she said within a week she understood it, and now she wants to keep the lunar Sabbath. So some of you are getting it quick. Even someone who's not even a Seventh-day Adventist or even a Sabbatarian has been listening to the messages and is like, yeah, I want to keep the Sabbath. It's looking really interesting. I know a lot of non-Adventists or non-Christians watch my channel, and it's inspiring you. So praise God. I'm so happy to hear that. So just continue. And I do want to set up a group where we can commune and encourage each other. I did set one up initially, but it started to annoy me because people I thought were joining that didn't have sincere intentions. They just wanted to push their own agenda, or they didn't really believe in this message, and they're trying to counteract what I've been sharing. So I just delete the group. I don't want to be debating or arguing with people anymore. I get enough of that on YouTube. I just want a group, if people are interested. I mean, I set up another one. There's a few of us in there. And it's quite nice at the moment. I like it so far. But I just want to have sincere people who believe this message. If you don't believe this message, then don't join, to be honest. If you don't believe the thing that I've shared, or you're not convicted, then don't join. I don't want to be arguing with you. Do you get what I mean? But if you are convicted, and you really want to keep God's Sabbath, lunar Sabbath, then by all means join us, So I just need to find a way to send out the link to the chat without other people, or these troublemakers, joining and causing issues. I don't want that, I just want a group of people who are sincere, that we can pray and encourage one another, because we have a great battle and we need to band together. It's so important with what's ahead of us. So I really want a good praying, strong group to strengthen us, to help us to truly keep God's law. Another positive thing I want to share as well, because one of the things I was worried about as well is Sabbath Fellowship. It's so important. And also I'm in Switzerland. I don't really speak the language very well, but God is so amazing, because when I was on YouTube, I came across another Lunar Sabbath group. I think they're based in America. And then I saw a comment from a lady and she was like, I'm from Switzerland. And she said, oh, we love your videos. So I messaged the lady and I said, oh, you're from Switzerland? I live in Switzerland as well. And I heard you keep the Lunar Sabbath. And then she sent me her details. She emailed me and she tells me when they meet. So I will be joining them on the next new moon service, I think on the 22nd of Feb on the Gregorian calendar. So then I'll meet them, and then they have some camping thing going on in April to open the year according to God's calendar for a week. So I'm going to join that. So I'm happy now, because I'm going to be meeting people here in Switzerland that I can worship with and make more friends. I've lost a lot of friends now. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Not that I care. I think that's a good thing, because it's times like this you realize who is who. So those who don't want to talk to me anymore, I mean, I don't really care. God is already replacing new people, and I've met people online as well. So I'm building my friend network up again, praise God, with more sincere people who love truth. So I'm thankful for that. So guys, when God gives you a message, when you are convicted, don't care what people say. One thing about me is that I don't care what people say. I don't care what people think. As long as I'm sincere and honest and my conscience is clear, don't let that stress you. Just walk according to God's law. And if you are convicted by what I'm sharing with you, then by all means move forward, study it. Don't care what people say about you in the church or whatever. Who cares? They're just words. Who cares? Just focus on yourself, your relationship with character, and being a better person, to those around you. And I think that's all I want to say in this video. Stay blessed. Keep me in prayers. I may take a break from YouTube for a while if I'm not uploading constantly, because I just want to relax now. I've dealt with so much the last week, and I think I just need to now just take it easy and just, enjoy enjoy my new faiths sort of, and my new experiences with God, and spend more time with Him. So anyway, take care. God bless, and God willing, you will see or hear from me in the next video. Take care and
it is simply too hard. The whole world is using a different calendar. To worship by this calendar could cost my job. You cannot live in the modern world and worship by this calendar.
The one argument against truth that its lovers and promoters have never been able to deny is that obedience to truth does carry a cross, the cross of obedience. Modern lives are regulated by the Gregorian calendar. Workdays, school days, weekends, vacations, all are calculated using a continuous weekly cycle. If the light of the true Sabbath is accepted, there will be separation. This is inevitable. Jobs have been lost, marriages destroyed, when one person accepts the truth and the other does not. However, this does not deter the true followers of Yahushua. Those who prize truth above all else do not wait for truth to become popular or obedience easy. When convicted of truth, they deliberately accept the cross, agreeing with the Apostle Paul that our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. The light of truth is advancing. Doctrines long buried under the error of assumption and tradition are being restored. Will you choose to follow? Will you prize truth enough to obey no matter what the cost? An eternity of happiness awaits all who make this choice.